Well, hi everybody. Welcome to the Joe Chaffee Weather Show. Good evening. It's coming up on 8 o'clock Eastern Time on the 16th of April, 2019. And we continue to move right along. Tax day is behind us, and half the month is behind us now. We are getting set for yet another round of storminess and severe weather that is going to start in the southern plains and parts of the Gulf states on Wednesday, and then gradually work its way eastward into the eastern part of the United States by the time we get to Friday and into Saturday. And I think there's going to be some widespread severe thunderstorm activity and possibly some tornadic activity along the way. It's been a very busy stretch of severe weather that we've been in, so we're going to take you through it. First off tonight, I'm going to start off with WPC's rainfall forecast map, because we really have this one storm system in play. It's going to take 3 days for it to move eastward, so there isn't anything else that looms in the longer term into early next week. So this is all pretty much clean as far as the precip that this storm is going to produce, and it's going to be widespread in terms of heavy rainfalls. The purple areas where you start to see that purple is the light purple is 1.5 inches, and then the darker purple is 2 inches of rain. So you can see solid rainfall of 2 inches or more from East Texas across the Mississippi Valley, the lower Mississippi Valley, in through the central Gulf states, on up through the Tennessee Valley, through the Appalachians, and extending into parts of the Northeast. The coastal areas will get a bit less, on the order of 1.5 inches or less, but still fairly substantial. And then some inland areas might do pretty well. We've got some pockets that WPC has picked out as potential for several inches or more. And of course, those areas up in Pennsylvania and on up into perhaps upstate New York and maybe even into northern New England, we're likely to see those move around just a little bit. But you get the general idea here that we're talking about a wide area of geography that's going to be impacted by this particular storm system. And we're already starting to see the pieces coming together with regards to the first round of severe weather that's going to be here for tomorrow. First off, on the satellite loop tonight in the Northeast, we do have this weak system that's coming down from the Great Lakes. Actually, what's beginning to happen is that we're starting to see a warm frontal boundary setting up across Delaware and Maryland and on westward as low pressure begins to form out in the western plains. And of course, you've got that tropical feeder of moisture coming in from the Pacific. The Gulf of Mexico is beginning to open up, and we'll see that on the surface map tonight in terms of the dew points that are being produced. And also the energy that's going to trigger all of this is a shortwave trough that is now swinging through the southwest, and you can see that on the bottom part of the satellite loop as it moves eastward. Anthony Orr, you hit Super Chat tonight. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Didn't have to do that, but I really appreciated our resident statistician on board. Okay, so as far as tonight is concerned, we don't have anything going on in the land of severe weather. Here's SPCs. They've got this sort of general area of thunderstorms from the southwest on up through the plains. There's not a whole lot of activity going on tonight with respect to precipitation. There's a bit of shower and thunderstorm activity moving through the southwest now with the shortwave, and then that weak area in the northeast, that little band of rain that you see coming off of Lake Erie and through northern Pennsylvania and parts of southwestern New York. Some of that is getting close to me, but it's hitting the dry air that's overhead and just kind of falling apart as it approaches. But we're going to have a busy next couple of days. So I'm going to we're going to start with, I want to first at least start off with the surface map here, and we'll also go to SPC's surface map, the tighter view. But here's what's going on at the moment across Texas and through the Gulf states. Many areas having actually a pretty nice day as high pressure moves out off North Carolina. Reasonable dew points, temperatures in the 70s. But we're beginning to see the tropical air coming in off the Gulf of Mexico, and we're starting to see dew points climbing into the 60s across South Texas, and that's gradually going to spread northward. It actually already has up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, for example, and in the areas in northeastern Texas, starting to see those dew points edge up into the upper 50s and low 60s. In the meanwhile, you can see that there's this bit of a frontal boundary that is setting up from a little front, a weak front that is starting to generate south of Long Island and across New Jersey, running back, analyzes a warm front into a weak low just north of Chicago, and then just sort of all snakes back down into Kansas and on up into the Rockies. So it's all of this energy that's back here out through the west. That's all going to be working its way eastward. Here's a close-up, because this is really going to be the first area of severe weather that we're going to consider. And that map, by the way, is from, this is a very recent map. These OBS are 7 o'clock Eastern Time OBS. It'll probably update again shortly. But if you look carefully, you should be able to see you've got temperatures in the upper 70s and even a few temperatures up around the 80-degree mark. But the dew points are all up now into the low and middle 60s. And that's that tropical air coming in from the Gulf of Mexico. You can see these southeast isobars. So that flow comes straight out of the Gulf into Texas, beginning to saturate the air. So as that energy starts to move eastward, we're going to start to get some of those big thunderstorms developing probably late tomorrow, and tomorrow night will be the first round. Now here's the current radar. As we said, you've got that area in the east, that area of rain coming in off of Lake Erie. Just going to freshen that up just a little bit, and moving southeastward. Much of this is just going to weaken, but it's ahead of that forming frontal boundary. And then you have a little bit of precip up in the plains, some showers and a few heavier downpours. And here's your short wave coming out of Nevada and into Arizona. That is the energy. It's a nice looking little shortwave trough there that is swinging eastward, and this is going to be the one that's going to trigger the development of the low and start triggering off all the severe weather. So let's look at SPC's forecast for Wednesday. This is from Wednesday morning 8 o'clock to Thursday morning 8 o'clock, and not a surprise, we've seen the area of slight risk and enhanced risk expanded just a little bit. Northeast Texas into Oklahoma, westernmost Arkansas, and a small portion of southern Kansas. And you've got this large area of slight risk that runs from Texas all the way up through Missouri, eastern Kansas, southern Iowa, and a small portion of west central Illinois. Marginal risk reaches up into southern Wisconsin to about Chicago, down southward to Memphis, so just east of Memphis, and then runs across Louisiana down along the Texas Gulf Coast. As this weather system progresses eastward, we'll move now to Thursday into Friday morning. And here, too, the Storm Prediction Center has added an area of enhanced risk for much of the southeastern half of Louisiana and the southern half of Mississippi, with slight risk pushing up into western Kentucky, and the marginal risk pushes up into Chicago. So this, watching this whole system play out, it seems that it's probably a wise thing for SPC to get more bullish as we get closer to the time frame. Everything seems to be coming together for a solid round of severe weather, as we said, for the next few days. And now as we move from Friday into Saturday, now this is on the day 4, and we've said many times, when SPC is showing something on days 4 to 8, they're pretty sure about it. And oftentimes you'll see it'll say predictability too low. They must have, they have pretty strong confidence here to put that 15% area, which would be the equivalent of slight risk for much of Florida, except for the western panhandle and the southern part of the state, just about all of South Carolina, most of the southeastern half of Georgia, almost all of North Carolina, almost all of Virginia, into Maryland, and just touching southern Delaware. I suspect if you had to draw the marginal risk boundary, it will probably run from the Florida panhandle and up the Appalachians and then turning east, maybe reaching New York City or possibly southern New England. That would be, I think, where I would probably put the border of marginal risk if you asked me. And tomorrow this moves into the day 3 time frame, so we'll see what they do with this as we go forward. So here's how it's going to play out in the upper air. And what I've done is I've gone back to the weekend system because this is the second one. Of course, the Plains blizzard last week was the first of these powerful systems that we've been dealing with. And then we had this one for Sunday, and each one has behaved a little differently. The up in the upper right over James Bay is what was left of the Plains storm and the upper air low that goes with it. This was back on Saturday, and you see that southern shortwave that kicked across Texas, got very vigorous here, hooked up with another shortwave in the north, swung across the Great Lakes and through the Northeast, really maintained its identity right through. We had severe weather going all the way up into the Hudson Valley from this. In fact, going all the way up into upstate New York. I had a friend of mine who lives up in Pulaski, and he showed pictures of what looked like golf ball size hail that they got up that way in north central New York State. Well, this trough, of course, vigorous and swings out. But now here comes the next system coming into the Pacific. That Pacific jet has been sending weather system after weather system after weather system. This one is going to be different from the other two in that it's going to take that southern energy and push it further to the east before it lifts it up. And here we are for Wednesday. You've got that southern shortwave, gets fairly vigorous, but there's a northern stream piece that comes in and phases with this and then really sharpens up. That trough really sharpens up, dives down, and cuts off. You've got a cut-off upper low sitting somewhere near Nashville. This is Friday night. So this is going to probably generate some kind of surface low that will run from the Gulf states and then run up the Appalachians as this upper low really gets wrapped up and moves into the central Appalachians and then starts moving northward. This is Saturday afternoon. Look how strong the southerly flow is along the East Coast. If you think back to the wintertime, I don't think we had a single event where we had a southerly flow quite like this. And we didn't really have any kind of closed upper low down in the central Appalachians to experience in terms of what it would have produced as far as wintry weather is concerned across the eastern part of the U.S. But here we are in the dead of spring, and when you've got something this strong and this vigorous in the upper atmosphere, you can bet for sure that there's going to be severe weather with this. The track goes up the Appalachians, and what happens is after Saturday, it reaches its peak intensity Saturday morning into early afternoon, and then the upper low starts to weaken a bit as it moves northward through upstate New York and into southern Canada. It doesn't swing eastward as a solid entity maintaining its strength, but it actually begins to weaken as we go into Sunday. And the reason why I mention this is because it does somewhat complicate the weather situation for Easter Sunday in the Northeast in that there probably will be some lingering showers. But in terms of the really active weather, for my area anyway, eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, we're talking about Friday night into Saturday afternoon as being prime time. So this system, after this pulls out, the upper pattern actually relaxes a little bit for a few days. It's not nearly as dynamic. You do have another shortwave coming later next week that dives down into Kentucky and Tennessee, but it's nothing like what we're seeing here for Friday for the next several days. So we'll go back now. We'll take a look at the surface map and move this along. I keep feeling like it's Wednesday here, and it's only Tuesday. Tuesday's not my favorite. Tuesday's my least favorite day of the week because Mondays are Mondays. You just come off the weekend. Tuesdays are sort of that realization that you've got still another 3 days left before you get to the weekend. Wednesday's a better day. All right, so here we go for the GFS anyway. And one of the things I should point out too is the fact that all the models seem to be very much on the same page with all of this. So you could certainly garner a lot of confidence when you see all the models doing roughly the same thing. There's probably some devil in the details sort of situation that you're going to have to work out over time in terms of the super specifics. But in terms of the overall way this thing is playing out, the confidence level, I think, is high. So you're at this point at the surface is where you get that phasing of the upper trough, and you've got low pressure up in the lakes, but now you've got this low that's down on the southern part of that trough, and this is where you see the GFS, fairly bullish here with precip for Wednesday night into Thursday morning, runs through the central Gulf states, and then you're going to have this low, the second low that's going to form right here. You see it here Friday afternoon sitting in eastern Tennessee, and then that drives northward as the upper low lifts up. It's actually tracking, very, very close to where the upper low is, and the GFS actually has significant rains being produced from northern Florida up through interior south and North Carolina, interior Virginia, east central PA, and eastern PA, and in through upstate New York, and then the whole thing just kind of moves eastward and begins to move offshore, and that's where you start to see, at least in theory, some improvement. But as we said, as far as Sunday is concerned, there's still going to be some lingering clouds and maybe some lingering showers, because that upper trough, even though it's weakening, is going to have to play itself through, and not making for the best weather as far as Easter Sunday is concerned. And speaking of Easter Sunday, just really quick, if you look across, this is Sunday morning. Actually, much of the nation is going to be okay. Much of the south, the northernmost plains. There's a low in Utah. It looks like it's going to be coming eastward and generating a little bit of snow there up in parts of Wyoming and into Colorado. That's going to be that system perhaps that the models are showing in the flow for the latter part of next week. There's nothing really organized here. When you look at this is, we're talking about a much weaker profile in the upper air going forward for next week. So this is really the playmaker with respect to the next few days. I'm going to go to the NAM3 model because that works pretty well. And I think we'll do is we'll close up first on the Gulf states. And this is for, let me just back it up so we can watch how the NAM3 handles these thunderstorms tomorrow. They start to develop tomorrow night in East Texas in that enhanced risk zone, and the NAM3 is pretty bullish here with what it's doing. Now, there must be something, an error with this particular map, or it suddenly has this big blow up because it disappears on the next one. So, but you can follow it along here with the line. That's a solid, two solid squall lines that the NAM3 is showing. One that moves across Arkansas, the other one across Louisiana and East Texas. Now you have a little bit of weakening, and you start to see the next, this is now for Thursday into Friday, where the enhanced risk shifts into southeast Louisiana and southern Mississippi, and you can see how the NAM3 develops those thunderstorms and pushes them in through Alabama, and eventually, well, this is as far as it goes on this run, because it only goes out 60 hours. The dynamics are pretty good. From what I'm seeing, the dynamics through all of this are fairly strong. I'll pull up the 700 millibar map, the 10,000 foot map, and you can see you'll be able to see the strong inflow coming in from the Gulf. Okay, so there we go. Now this is, if you look at the wind barbs across Texas, they're southwest, and from the Gulf of Mexico, they're southwest. The colors where you see the red, there's your jet streaks, and this is early Thursday morning, right through much of northeast Texas and on up into northwest Louisiana and southern Arkansas. There's where your squall line is going to be with that really, really strong jet. A lot of wind shear, wind increasing with height. And if you look at the wind barbs, it might be a little bit hard to see, but you're seeing 50 and 60 knot winds across much of western Louisiana and extreme eastern Texas with this, and then that shifts eastward as we go through the day. The vigorous nature of the upper trough then produces the next round of storms going into Mississippi and Alabama. Now, I'm going to change regions so we could take a look at the east close up. And here's where, your upper low is going to cut off. Okay, this is again at the 10,000 foot level. So now we're going to move into Friday, and this is where you have the potential for severe weather in the mid-Atlantic and down in the South Atlantic states, where they have the they have the 15% risk. And the very, very strong jet here coming in off the Florida coast. You have 60 and even some 70 knot winds here that are coming into South and North Carolina. So that should certainly be supportive of some pretty hefty thunderstorms. The question for how far north this gets is a bit more difficult, and a couple of reasons. So here's how it looks as we go into Saturday. Now, you do have that strong jet going all the way up the coast, up to southern New England. The question is, how much are we going to be able to get those really strong, moist dew points to move up? And that sometimes, certainly in the spring, that can be problematic. Here's how it looks on the dew point map, and you can see the saturation that's going on through Texas during Wednesday and into Wednesday night. You've got dew points in the mid 60s to low 70s, and then gradually as we move eastward on Thursday, you've got those mid and upper 60s to near 70 dew points through the central Gulf states. And as we move into Friday now, you've got those 60-degree dew points by late Friday afternoon, pushing all the way up into New York City and just north. You even got a 60-degree dew point up into western Massachusetts. So the juicier dew points are going to be down in the Carolinas, which are in the upper 60s, and maybe there might even be the odd 70 dew point along the coast. But come Saturday, as this low kind of wraps up and the upper low starts to pull northward, you see what happens with the dry air, the dry air that's coming down through the Mississippi Valley and into the southeast. It's coming in down and around. So when we get to Saturday morning, 60 dew points are up in Pennsylvania, near New York City, southern New England, into central Massachusetts, and the drier air is actually sweeping in from the south. So the cold front itself is kind of coming in from the southwest rather than coming in more from the west or northwest. It's because you have this upper low the way it is that you've got. This is how it behaves. This is how it looks on the surface with respect to the dew points, and then your dry air actually comes in from the southwest and south as the front lifts up and around. So you watch your dew points go from 61 by Saturday morning to 47 by Saturday afternoon. And look at the dew points down in the southeast at this point. They're down in the 30s to near 40. You've got 40 dew points even down into northern Florida. So you get an upper low this far south. It's really going to drag down dry air well down into the southeastern states. And of course, at this point, after Saturday morning, the worst of this is over with. You'll lift the front up. You still have leftover action going on in upstate New York and New England, but even there, by the end of the day, your dew points are dropped from the mid and upper 50s to the mid and upper 30s in a matter of about 6 hours. So that's a pretty sharp frontal boundary that is coming through. And with regards to total rainfall, and this is another, at least a clean map we can look at for the most part, near where the low tracks, which is just inland, and near where the upper and east of where the upper low winds up tracking, you've got this streak of 2, 3, and 4 inch rain amounts that run up from southeast Mississippi through central Georgia, western South and North Carolina, interior Virginia, on up through Pennsylvania, and into upstate New York. Along the coast, the amounts are lower. There's probably going to be more variability on the coast with this because of the fact that the system is pinned in the mountains rather than being more inside the coastal plain. So there'll probably be some variability. It'll depend on whether you get into a heavier cluster of thunderstorms or not that will move up from the south. Sometimes you can get, I've seen it where southern New England and Long Island, get hammered with something that comes in from off the ocean. And then there's a bit of a gap in between, and then you've got that heavier area that is out to the west. On the close-up, you can see sort of how it plays out with respect to the front. And here we go. This is Friday night, 2 a.m., 8 a.m. The low is in central Ohio. You notice how that low actually tracks north and then tracks northwestward. That's the impact of the upper low now. And, of course, you've got this arm that is pushing through the east and then swings out, and it's done. And then you have your lingering precip that's going to be left over for Easter Sunday. So just, I guess, in summary, this is severe weather episode number 3 in this current series, and we'll, at least in terms of systems with punch and magnitude, this looks like it will be the last one of the series that we're going to be dealing with. Izzy Deke, thanks for hitting Super Chat. Really appreciate it, sir. And feel better, because I know you're not feeling well. Why is there one storm after another causing us all this terrible headaches and some kind of fear? There were 4 tornadoes reported in Pennsylvania, and one was like only an hour away from me. Anthony Orr had the F-Zero tornado that was in Scranton. I think he said he was only 6 miles from that one. And Brad Doherty, I don't know if he's on tonight, but Sussex, Delaware had an F2 with 120, 130 mile an hour winds. We've seen over the last number of years, by the way, a general increase in tornadic activity in the Northeast, while the tornado activity in what's considered to be, Tornado Alley has actually been running subnormal for much of the time the last 5 or 6 years. Must maybe some kind of cyclical thing that's going on, I don't know. But you do have this happen sometimes where you get setups that bring severe weather in places that don't usually see it in April. It's a little unusual to see severe weather to the extent that we saw here Sunday night and Monday, as far north as we did into upstate New York, with a tornado in Delaware and tornadoes in Pennsylvania. Last summer, as I recall, last spring and summer was also a pretty active stretch for tornadic activity in the state of Pennsylvania. So it looks like, we're in kind of in a bit of a repeat mode here with respect to the pattern. We shall see. The mountains disrupt the weather pattern enough to prevent severe weather and tornadoes. They can, Johnny Quest, but it depends. It depends on a lot of things, and sometimes if the dynamics are really powerful, they can overcome certain obstacles that are put along the way, and sometimes those same mountains can enhance the severe weather depending on one thing or another. But certainly it looks like that this system is going to be a fairly solid rain producer for somebody in an area that's seen a rather substantial amount of rain over the last week or so. How windy, Chuck Cardillo asked, do you think it will get here Friday and Saturday? Well, Friday it's going to be a south wind, and the gradient the southerly gradient does get rather tight Friday afternoon and Friday night, especially along the coast. I just want to see what kind of winds they generate here along the coastal areas. And in fact, the inland area is not too much, but in terms of the coast, off the Carolina coast and on northward to Long Island later Friday and Friday night, the 10-meter wind, I'll bring that map up for you, and here's the 10-meter wind for Friday night. I mean, the first yellows are about 30 knots, so you've got 30 knot winds from the southeast into Saturday morning, and you actually have some 30 to 40 knot winds being shown off the Jersey Shore and the South Shore of Long Island. So as that front lifts up, it's going to get fairly windy for my neck of the woods, certainly for Long Island, and for coastal New Jersey, gales for sure if that's the case. But you'll notice that once the front goes by, the winds just collapse. So you do get some gusty winds Friday night into Saturday morning, early afternoon. You can see some pockets of there, some sustained winds of 20 to 24 knots in the greens up in the west side of the Catskills and points north. And then they're gone because the low continues to weaken and it lifts on up into Canada by the time we get into Sunday morning. Going to be fun times around here, folks. No doubt about it. So one last trip to the board, because then I am going to have to go. I just want to see what is the main driver causing storm after storm. Chuck, you've got this very active Pacific jet, and the north is getting involved as well. We've gotten where each one of these systems has kind of moved the trough position, the mean trough, further and further to the east. The Plains blizzard, the trough was out there at about 100 degrees west, and then the system from over the weekend, the trough was closer to 90 degrees west near Chicago, or a little bit further east than that. And now this one, the trough is going to be almost near 80 degrees west. So each one has kind of done its job to sort of move the atmospheric pattern, just kind of shifting it step by step a little bit further to the east. As strong as that upper low is, can it be cold enough for winter precip in higher elevations? Well, I did happen to notice that I think on one of the surface maps there's like a couple of little splotches of blue there near where the upper low is. If we saw this maybe about 2 weeks ago, perhaps it would have been a bigger issue, but there may just be a little bit too much warm air now that's getting involved. Who knows? Maybe at the highest elevations, I guess it's not impossible. Let me just take a look here. On this run, it didn't really do any blue patches. On the earlier runs, they did. I just want to take a look at at least take a look at what the 850 temperature is. And yeah, there is actually a pocket of below zero temperatures at the 5,000 foot level that moves into the Smoky Mountains and on up into Western Virginia and southern West Virginia. I just wonder whether there'll be any precip left for it to work on, and that's just up at that level. The levels underneath are probably much warmer than that. Let's look at the 2 meter temperatures. I'm not putting them up on the screen because I'm not going to have too much time here. Yeah, I mean the 2 meter temperatures are pretty warm through Saturday. I mean they do get down into the 40s, and there's a small pocket of less than 40 in Western Virginia and in extreme northwestern North Carolina of temperatures of 40 or less. But by that time, I don't know how much precip, if any, is going to be left going on there unless it fires up due to whatever instability. Let's take a look at that again maybe tomorrow and Thursday and see if it becomes an issue. Can you make mention of living in the mountainous area that decreases the threat of tornadoes, or is that just not really true? Most mountainous areas don't really see them, but every once in a while you do. You do wind up with surprises. Where you do see them up in elevated areas, like up in Denver, for example, and in some other places. Doesn't completely rule them out, but it does reduce the general number. Notice that when you get where you see much of the tornado activity that goes on, the land is pretty flat, and that would certainly make sense, but. We have seen them up in New England and in some places where there is some elevation. So you just have to have, you've got to have really good dynamics to pull that off. All right, folks, got to go at this point. Thanks so much for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. We'll have the Joe and Joe Weather Show tonight at 9:25 on my Facebook page, meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Patreon members, check out the post from late this afternoon. I did kind of go through the severe weather risks and how this whole thing progresses from west to east over the next 3 days. For those of you, I mentioned this almost every night, but if you do enjoy a solid extended weather experience, you can add Patreon to your list. A number of the folks on here are on there, and you get a lot of extra stuff, including extra live streams, which I think I will pop on with one for tomorrow. Weather app Also, the free weather app will come in useful, particularly if you're in eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, but you can use it just about anywhere, and there will be an update coming to this app to make things a whole lot easier for you as far as going to your own location is concerned. But you can download that for free, and I put both those links are up there on the board. And don't forget, folks, if you shop on Amazon, you can use the link that's on the descriptor to this live stream or the descriptor to this video if you're watching it on a replay. We're a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for us to earn fees by linking to Amazon.com and affiliated sites. So, in other words, if you go on there, use the search bar, get your stuff, which you're going to get regardless, but if you go through my search bar, Amazon throws me a few peeps for Easter, okay? And it doesn't cost you an extra dime. Thank you for those of you who have done that in the past. Thank you, Anthony Orr and Izzy D, for hitting Super Chat tonight. I really appreciate it. And we'll be back at the same time, roughly the same time. I'll be on a little bit earlier tomorrow. We'll see how my schedule goes. Have a great evening, everybody.